situational one, of which, yeah, you can feel bad if you ate hot pizza.
Yeah.
But the trigger not being situational, but the trigger being one of emotion, I can't imagine that I'll go to my little reward stash and go, I've got a bar of chocolate, and I'll go, this'll do it.
Yep, you're exactly right. And so what the idea behind the treat is that you plan that in. You decide, you have a look at your week, where am I going to have that treat? And the idea would be that you have that treat not when you're highly emotional. You have it when you're calm and in a pleasant environment where you're actually going to enjoy that treat. So you're actually mindful when you're eating it. So Saturday afternoon is a bit of me time. I'm going to grab a magazine and eat my chocolate, whatever it is. So I'm actually going to sit there and I'm actually going to enjoy eating every mouthful of that chocolate. And that's going to be my treat, and at the end of that, that's done. So when you get to the emotional circumstance where that's where I had a rubbish day and I just want chocolate. Okay, I've made a decision that I'm going to have that planned treat on Saturday. I can choose to have it now if I want to, but that means I don't get to have it on Saturday. So do I want it now? Do I want it enough to have it now and so I don't have it on Saturday? Or will I wait until Saturday? If you can do it in a mindful way at the time, then go ahead and do it. But if it is purely just emotional, is this actually going to help? Is this actually going to make me feel better? Or is it actually going to make me feel bad? Because oftentimes when you get to that situation, like, should I have the chocolate, shouldn't I have the chocolate? I have it, then I feel bad, and then I eat more of it, and then I feel bad, and then there's a pattern of behaviour that then follows day after day after day. You're not going to be successful every single time. If this is a pattern of behaviour that's been happening for a very long time, years and years, many 10s, 20s, however many years since childhood, then it's not going to be something that is just fixed in 2 minutes. I wish I had a magic wand and I could wave it and it would all go away. But these sort of patterns of behaviour don't. A lot of people will find when they're in a challenge that they will be better at this. They'll be able to slow down the behaviour. It won't be as much because they're very focused on what their goal is. But really, if we want to kick the habit long term, we need to be working on this each and every day so that it's not something that you just don't have chocolate for 10 weeks. Because that's what most people do. They go, right, well, I just won't have it for the next week. I'm going to be super good. I'm just not going to have any of those things. I'm not going to have any treats in that time. And then I get to the end of the 10 weeks and I want to have everything inside.
All those kilos come back.
That's right.
They're rushing back.
Yeah, that's pretty.
With some friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're very kind like that. So we need to learn how to have, instead of banishing food as being good or bad or terrible, evil, or just not, there's a whole range of foods I'm just not eating. We do need to learn to have those foods in a reasonable sort of life, so that we're not getting so much emotion attached to it. It's a hard one. Emotional eating is really tough. It's a really tough one to kick. Different strategies do work for different people. If you find that that strategy doesn't work, then let me know. Bruce is going to be your first contact point who will come to me, but I'm very happy to work with you on these sort of things. But I wish I could give you one strategy that's going to work for every single one of you, but unfortunately it's not. But the planned treat, the planned meal, is one that works for a lot of people. So it's one that I would recommend at least starting with and see how it goes. But again, it's that commitment to go, okay, I'm actually going to give myself permission to do this.
It's hard.
Absolutely. People go, oh, sure, that's easy. No, you give it a try. It's
That's a years
hard.
of guilt. It's like you can't imagine that you can.
Oh, are you sure I'm allowed to do this? Are you sure?
And
When I
if
tell patients,
if you've got us doing the 6,000 kilojoules a day, and I don't know how we're going to do it, if we're going to count it religiously or what, but then does that go over and above? Like if it's Friday and I say, yep, I want to have 2 glasses of wine tonight, can I have that on top of my 6,000 because it's my treat?
That's right.
Mm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you might just go, I'll log everything until I get to that meal. If you want to log it, you can, but you might not want to log it because that might be reinforcing
Yeah.
a bit of a trigger there. So you might want to just go, right, that was my treat meal, or that was my treat snack, so. But giving yourself permission, actually going, I'm going to allow myself to have that, takes away the emotion of it. That's being kind to yourself, and then we don't have the feel bad and the guilty and all of that thereafter. It's hard. It is really hard to do. If you've got something social that lends itself, like if it's someone's birthday, then it's fairly easy. You'd have a piece of cake. That is, and that you can go, okay, I'm going to have that piece of cake. I'll give myself permission to have that piece of cake. It's the weeks where there's not actually anything on that you have to actively make the decision, I am going to have whatever, and you're kind of sitting by yourself or maybe in a family situation and I'm actually going to have this. That's where it's hard. You almost get a little bit anxious and nervous going, am I sure I'm going to do this? But being able to do it and actually really enjoying it is a really powerful experience. It's really, a lot of people find it really helpful once they get over the first couple of times. They actually find that it does work. And they can then say no at other times, knowing, well, I don't want to have it tonight because then I can't have it when I actually really want to have it. The other trick to that planned treat is make sure it's things that you actually want to be eating. They're your favourite foods. Not just because the family wants to have pizza and you're like, I don't actually like pizza. That is a waste of a treat. Have what you really like. If you're going to have chocolate, have the best chocolate that you can find, or your favourite chocolate. Don't have the rubbish kids one that is, just in the cupboard. Make it something that you really love and want to do. Alright, so, what else do we need to talk about? Let's do the meal planning. What's that eraser on?
Yep, it is right at the end there. You had a hint on it.
Ah, so it is.
Well, they come back through. Now, anybody want to take notes? I have notepads and pencils here. Just with meal planning.
You have a treat every day. That's right. Thank you, Bruce.
Alright.
Notes?
So, in terms of what to eat, again, I would love to be able to tell you that this is what you should be eating and that it should be the same for everybody. But the reality is, people are different. I've chosen 6,000 and 9,000 as rough estimations of the amount of calories that you will need, or kilojoules you will need to be eating. So 6,000 for females, 9,000 for males. Now there are definitely people who will need to eat more, and there probably, unfortunately, is also people that might need to eat less. Everyone would love calorie counting and kilojoule counting to be an exact science. It's disappointing, but it is not. It is fraught with so much error that we can only ever estimate. So if you have 6,025 kilojoules, I promise it's going to make no difference. You're going to have days where it's a touch higher and days where it's a touch less. That's fine. What I don't want though is people eating well below about 5,000 kilojoules. And for males, if we're eating well below 7,000 kilojoules. You can go into starvation, and it can then mean that you're preventing yourself from actually achieving what you wanted to. So people have probably heard about starvation, or what's called the thrifty gene. So if you go too low with what you're eating, your body will start to conserve energy and store rather than burn up. Now that happens over a period of time. So having one day where you don't eat very much because, I don't know, you were sick, for example, and you eat pretty much nothing, that's fine. I'm talking a pattern of behaviour where it happens over days, weeks. That's where we can start getting into trouble. In this challenge, we want you to be exercising. We need to feed, we need to fuel that exercise. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to complete the exercise. torturing yourself is not what the 10-week challenge is about. We want you to get results, sure, of course we do. You want to get results, but you've got to make sure that these patterns are things that you can keep up in the long term, not just suffer through for 10 weeks to get to the other end. Because I'm sure you want to lose those kilos if that's your goal, and you don't want to pick them back up again. So in terms of tracking how much you're eating, MyFitnessPal is one app that you can use. There's another one called Easy Diet Diary, which I really like for the reason that it is Australian. So the foods in it are Australian, which helps.
Yeah, what is that one?
Easy Diet Diary.
Does it link to Strava?
Does it
Does it link to Strava?
What's Strava?
It's,
It does.
it does? Yeah.
It's like a train. Oh, well, see, I'm not up on the latest. We'll have to have a discussion about that. So Easy Diet Diary. On Easy Diet Diary, you can scan things, so it's got the barcode scanner, very similar to MyFitnessPal. The difference, though, is that 3 people have to scan the same label for it to be embedded into the system. My issue with MyFitnessPal is people keep putting things in there, and so there's all these random foods in there that are nowhere near correct. And because it's American, a lot of foods, they're actually American foods which are different to here. So that's why I tend to use that one. Both work, they're both good, but my preference is Easy Diet Diary. You can put exercise in there as well. There was a question about whether we should be eating our exercise calories. The exercise in Easy Diet Diary is better than a lot of the others, but it still overestimates your calorie burn. If you're using a Polar or a Garmin or a Fitbit or something along those lines, that is much more accurate than what it is in the Easy Diet Diary. So if you're using some other device to track with, then use the calories burnt on that tracker in the Easy Diet Diary. Does that make sense? So if you burn 200 by your Polar, then put in the exercise that you walked and just keep putting the minutes up till it gets to 200 calories. But if you put in there that you walked for 65 minutes, it might say that you've burnt 400 calories. Not necessarily correct. If you don't use Polar or Garmin or Fitbit or any of those sort of things, then do put your exercise in there, but definitely go on the low side or the shy side. So take off a few minutes, or don't necessarily eat all the calories that it says that you've burnt in that session. I'd love to be able to tell you that it's accurate, but it's just not. And if you do eat the exercise, you should be eating the exercise calories, yes, but if you eat all of them, we could be in trouble. Okay.
So we eat the 6,000 kilojoules, and we eat what we've burned off of exercise that day as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So in the tracker, it will actually add on calories for the exercise burnt.
Right.
So it'll be 6,000, and then you can put it on.
Yeah.
So in Easy Diet Diary, when you load it up, it will ask you what your weight is, and your height is, and your age, and what your goal is, and it will give you a goal amount of kilojoules. I'm very happy for you to use that goal instead of 6,000. Okay? Because that's going to be more specific to your height and your weight and your male femaleness and those sort of things. So I'm giving you rough estimates of what 6,000 looks like so that you can see what it looks like, and 9,000. But I'm not necessarily saying that you all absolutely need to be eating 6,000 every day, because everyone is individual. I wish it was that easy. It would make my job a lot easier. But
So
it's not.
in that app, when you're exercising, has it got like what you're doing if you're not tracking it by watch or
Yes, so it's got circuit, it's got step, it's got
for how
running, walking, cycling, spin,
Yeah.
all yoga, power yoga, it's got everything in it. Yep.
And what's your a workout Bruce here? Kill it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Head one.
And it's pick up with any in that one.
It's your old man, mate, it's persistent. When you do a workout at Bruce's, a typical one, half that's weightlifting and half of it's cardio, is that what you put down? So half an hour, 20 minutes of cardio.
Yeah, and I have noticed that MyFitnessPal particularly doesn't even
Weight
rate
Index,
strength training.
no
Yeah.
credit at all. Is that
Easy
true,
Diet
though?
Diary does though.
Yeah.
Oh, does it? Weight
Yes.
training will have a kilojoule
Yep.
rate, yeah.
It'll have moderate or vigorous, so it does give you some level of how intense that session
Okay.
was.
Yep.
Yep.
Sweet.
So potentially even if you can, like during your session or while you're here, maybe even put it in the phone and then Bruce, you can kind of discuss with Bruce as to whether that's accurate for you or not, based on what the session was, just till you get used to it.
As Lauren said, the MyFitnessPal is very generous too, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
it's-
very.
Yeah.
I was using it for a while there, and I was doing 20 minutes high intensity on the spin bike, and it wanted to give me 1,200 kilojoules.
Sweet.
If I
It was rather generous, yeah. Which is a meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Calorie to kilojoules is 4.
Yeah.
yes.
See?
All right. So, 6,000 kilojoules is not always a lot of food. So it does depend on what selections you make. As you start to track your food more, you will start to realise that some foods are worth a lot of kilojoules and others not so much. So I've obviously chosen what is a very healthy day, and therefore we get quite a lot of food out of that. So most people looking at that would go, okay, that's fairly reasonable, I could eat that.
I'll make sure you guys can view it.
If we compare that to a male version, they get 4 Weet-Bix, 30 almonds, 3 slices of bread, 150 grams of ham.
Yeah, every year, there's always a question about bread being the evil, but
Yes.
Lauren will tell you every time, bread isn't the evil one. Like anything else, in moderation. More like a barbecue sauce.
So, if we compare the two, obviously more food, bigger serving sizes, but essentially the same meals over the day. Now, if we compare that to an unhealthy day, we would get far less. In fact, a normal size regular pizza is more than 6,000 kilojoules. So, it does depend on the choices that you make. Now, not everyone is going to love every food on here. I'm not saying that every day for the next 10 weeks that you need to be eating this. I'd highly recommend that you don't. You need to have some variety. If you need, some people like to have a lot of variety. They like to eat different things every day. Other people are actually pretty okay with eating much the same things. Some people are pretty okay with eating the same breakfasts and lunches, but dinners tend to change. And that's where it gets difficult, because every one of you is going to be individual. You all have different circumstances, different families, sometimes with very fussy children, husbands, whoever in the family, and it can be very difficult to feed everybody. So I find the hardest thing when it comes to challenges, everyone wants to know what to eat. And I can give you a meal plan, but I guarantee you're going to look and go, oh, I don't eat that, oh, I don't like that, or that's not going to work for me. Or you might go, actually, that looks alright, and then you go and actually try and do it. Oh, the lettuce was awful. Something happens. But this is where we need to empower you to be able to feed yourself. Because you can feed yourself. You inherently do know the right foods to be eating. I promise, you do. But you start double guessing yourselves and start going, oh, well, bread is a good example. Well, is bread really that good? I don't know. If you think back to Grandma, what she used to eat, I promise she ate bread and she was still tiny. bread isn't the problem. It might be what you put on it, and it might be how many slices you have. But having a slice or two of bread isn't going to kill you. But it certainly is going to give you a bit of energy. And energy is what you need so that you can train. There was a question about what you should be eating around your training sessions. You absolutely need to be eating before training. So roughly around 2 hours before, if you're training throughout the day. If you're training first thing in the morning. If you're training first thing in the morning, it does depend on how long the training session is. So if your training session is under 45 minutes or under, then you don't need to eat beforehand. If it's going to be a longer session, it's going to be an hour and a half or a couple of hours, or whatever, you're going for a bike ride or something, then you do need to eat something beforehand. Okay? That could be just a piece of fruit. It doesn't have to be anything too involved. You don't have to be getting up and making breakfast for hours beforehand. But ideally, you should be eating something about 2 hours before a training